Thank you, Daniel. I think that was a very interesting overview of what we heard yesterday. And I think that as we look into the future, although there's lots of uncertainty as to where we're going to go, there are a lot of positive things to be considered. So just because we are accountants and auditors, we do need to now look at the numbers. So I'm going to hand over to Di Sacombe, who I don't think needs much introduction from a Mazars perspective. But Di is an admitted attorney with a master's degree in taxation and has been involved in tax for over 10 years. Di is currently the National Head of Tax Training at Mazars, and in this capacity provides training to Mazars partners, staff, and our clients. Di also consults on income tax matters, including corporate, individual, international tax, as well as VAT. Di, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you. Right, good morning, everybody. Now, after all the nice entertainment from Daniel, we have to get down to nitty-gritty. And as Michelle said, we do have to deal with some numbers. I did hope you heard that part in the intro about an attorney on the stage now. So when attorneys start with numbers, you know anything can happen. But what we need to do is look at the budget speech from a tax perspective. And I must admit, I think like most of you, I got so tired of every man and his dog giving their speculation about what was going to be increased for tax. And then hilariously, no man or his dog was actually anywhere near Minister Nene, it seems, in any walking in the parks, etc. Because the tax changes we had were quite unexpected, and actually, against all odds, we ended up with a bit of good news. So let's have a look at some of those. Now, every time we get a start to the budget speech, we get a list of general ideas about what we're looking at. Now, some of them are actually implemented in the proposed changes that he mentions in the speech, and like Daniel said, very importantly, the supporting documentation, and some of them really aren't. So let's look at the big guys for us. Well, of course we know that we have to increase tax revenues. Now, in all the changes that we're going to discuss today, people are estimating that we're probably going to bring in another round about 8.3 billion rand due to the tax changes that have been made. Now, I'm sure you've seen the figures bandied about in the press of 12 and 15 billion. So the 8.3 is looking a little bit shaky, and we have to kind of wonder where Minister Nene does think the other money's coming from. So yes, we've had some tax increases. I'm going to discuss those with you to actually give you an indication of what the extent of those are. But, as I say, bringing in 8.3 billion, we're going to have to see whether we hit the targets or not. The big issue is elimination of erosion of our corporate tax base. I want to discuss that to a degree. And then, of course, incentives for small business. Now, here I want to sound our first warning. We've had much discussion between seminars I've given you and the budget speech last year about the Dennis Davis Tax Committee. Now, as we all know, he's got his team and they're there to review our tax laws to see what's working and what isn't. Now, one of the first areas that the minister gave an instruction for the Dennis Davis Tax Review Committee to look at was small business. So there they produced this huge report saying what changes need to be made, how do we help fund small business, what tax incentives do they need. Now, ladies and gents, what was taken out of that by Treasury and what's been implemented is completely and utterly weak and ineffective. So here's my warning shot. It seems that when we get information out of any of the reviews that the Davis Commission's doing, if too much is put towards tax incentives, tax breaks, it seems that Treasury treads lightly. They are so over-focused on any potential abuse of incentives we're going to be given that the incentives, as I've just said, are weak and flaky at best. However, it does seem that the moment the Dennis Davis Committee actually raises some warning, that Treasury steps in immediately and starts talking about anti-avoidance and punitive legislation. Now, the one area that the Dennis Davis Committee still got to review, of course, is wealth taxes. Trusts and capital gains tax. We've had a warning shot for trusts in this budget speech, but it's nowhere near what's to come. Now, if the substantial area of tax increases in our years going forward is going to come from wealth taxes, we're going to have to keep a very strict eye on what the Dennis Davis Committee does recommend in respect of increasing our taxes on wealth taxes. Capital gains tax, estate duty, it's not going away. Even in this budget speech, we were told estate duty is not going away. They want to put more stuff into your estate, to put your estate duty on, levy your estate duty on. So again, what we're seeing, warnings coming out of the Davis Commission. Here's tax leakage. Be careful, Treasury. Treasury steps in. This is what we're going to do. This is anti-avoidance. And I'm going to give you one example. But, says the Dennis Davis Committee, we need some incentives. We need boosting. We need tax breaks. Oh, says Treasury. And they come out with what is an absolutely wishy-washy nonsense incentive for a micro-business regime that already has proven not to work. So let's go tinker with that some more. So, ladies and gents, we must be careful of this. And I think even more than our budget speeches each year, we've got to watch these reports coming out of the Dennis Davis Committee. And as I say, I'll address that. Now, what was interesting in this year's budget speech was in the documentation that comes with the budget speech is to actually look at who is putting money into the tax pot. Now, a lot of people this budget speech are speaking about, the old Minister Manuel's system of taxation, where Manuel believed that we were going to tax companies and that's where our revenue was going to come from. Now, of course, as company after tax, company profits are decreasing, the tax we can collect on companies is decreasing, and they are very clearly not the big payers into the tax pool anymore. So you'll see even in collections up to the end of March last year, individuals and trusts were contributing more than companies into our general tax pot that the fiscus is going to then utilize. But if we look at anticipated collections up to the end of March this year, we see that even more is being contributed by individuals and trusts than companies again. So ladies and gents, this trend is not going to change. And I love every time we get new words for bad things. So the new word for bad things is you'll see everywhere. South Africa's tax system has to be progressive and fair. Ignore fair, just worry about progressive. Because progressive means the more you have, the more we are going to bleed you for every single cent of tax that we can. That's what progressive means, and that's what's coming. Now, the big news, of course, was that all our income tax brackets were adjusted. Okay, fair enough, they were widened. But, of course, everybody except the lowest tax bracket, your tax rate went up by 1%. Now, I want to discuss this a little bit. So we've got, at the moment, our highest marginal tax rate of 41% and our lowest tax rate of 18%. Now, as I've said to you, the brackets were widened and we had this marginal rate increase. Now, I need to discuss a little bit about what this means. So if we look at our individuals and we look at our tax tables, we know that in respect of our individuals, we tax you on your taxable income. Now remember, taxable income will include any taxable capital gains you've made that year from disposing of any capital assets, shares, property, that kind of thing. So that's already in there. Now I need you to be careful, because when we look at this tax table, when we speak about the brackets, we know that in respect of our brackets, we've got a starting point to the bracket, in this case, and where my light is indicating 181,901, and a bracket ends at 284,100. So that's a bracket. Now, ladies and gents, this is the important part, and I'm going to use the top tax bracket to illustrate my point. So what I want you to understand is the top tax bracket now starts at 701,301. Now, it's important to know that up to your taxable income of 701,301, you are going to pay tax of 208,587. Now, what does that mean? It means that up to your 701,000 taxable income, you are going to pay what we call an average rate of tax. So I take your 208,000 and I divide it by 701,000 and I get approximately a 29.7% tax. That's your average tax. Now, for every 1 rand of taxable income that you go over 701,000, you will now pay 41% tax. That's your marginal rate. So ladies and gents, you've got to understand this mix between average rates up to where your bracket starts and then marginal rates afterwards. Also, what we've seen every year is this bracket space between where your bracket starts and ends has been made a lot wider each year, but not by so much this year. Now, what I want to indicate to you is what this actually means. And the very clever people in my office who can do numbers, thank goodness there's some of us, actually put this little table together for me to indicate this to us. So I want you to understand exactly what the less widening, if you like, of our brackets and the 1% increase in the marginal rates of tax did. If we take on the left-hand side of the screen, we've got your taxable income. Now, we've been lazy and we've just assumed the taxable income stays constant. So we've got a taxpayer all the way from relatively low in our tax brackets, 143,500, all the way up to just over 1.2 million. That's your taxable income. Now, if we look at the tax you would have paid on that, and I'm assuming a taxpayer under 65, and I've taken their rebates into account. If I look at the tax you would have paid on that in 2014, you will see those numbers on the second column from the left-hand side. Now what happens is between 2014 and 15, we had a budget speech and the brackets were widened. No increase in the marginal rate. Now the effect of that was, when we look at the tax that gave rise to in 2015, everybody paid less tax. So ladies and gents, the mere widening of a bracket caused everybody in those stratospheres of taxable income to pay less tax. Now what happens is we have the change from 2015 to 2016. Now ladies and gents, the interesting thing here is that every single tax bracket taxpayer is actually affected. And the best way for me to illustrate that is to draw your attention to the very far right-hand side of the page now. Because what happens now is we get every single taxpayer, even if they are still saving on tax in this lowest tax bracket, they are saving less. So their tax savings are not what they would have been, even in the 18% bracket, had the bracket been widened as much as it has been in the past. Our taxpayers above that, you will see, they actually end up in a situation where they are now paying more tax than they did before. So what we see here is, for the first time, taxpayers not only losing their tax savings, but actually now paying in more tax. So ladies and gents, the effect of the tax tables was twofold. Number one, everybody lost out. Even if you were paying less tax, it's not as less a tax as it could have been had the brackets been widened as before. And secondly, those who now have to pay in, there's not a tax saving, you're actually going to pay more tax. You've lost twice. Because number one, you've actually lost the tax saving that you had, and you're now paying in extra tax. So the effect of that tax table, ladies and gents, is a very, very clever effect. It looks like not much of an increase to increase your marginal rate by 1%, but the effect of the very narrow, if you like, widening of those tax tables will genuinely look at affecting all taxpayers and the taxes collected. Now, ladies and gents, always, I just wonder how much abuse our senior citizens can take. Because every year we get the rebates. And every year I have a look to see what's happening in respect of our tertiary rebate. Now, ladies and gents, the tertiary rebate is available to taxpayers 75 and over. And I must say, you just are not rewarded for living in these hard times to a ripe old age, even though I believe too many of us are now living too long. So what we see now now is if you have made it to the ripe age of 75, you will be awarded for the 2016 year by your tertiary rebate increasing by a bold 99 Rand. It's our worst ever. So ladies and gents, there are going to be our rebates for the 2016 year of assessment. And as always, we get our tax thresholds. Now I need to just raise a point here. Please remember your tax thresholds are taxable income you can earn and not pay any tax. But what we must look at as well as these thresholds are two things. Number one, you are still entitled to earn your local tax-free interest. 23,800 if you're under 65, 34,500 if you're 65 and over. So you're on top of this threshold of free taxable income. You on top of that can get your local interest exemption. And then of course we've got starting right now on the 1st of March our tax-free savings schemes. And that's also going to allow taxpayers to invest up to 30,000 each year, 500,000 over a lifetime into these tax-free investments, and all your returns from those investments will also be tax-free. So please just be careful when we look at these tax thresholds, what they actually mean alongside our other tax-free investment opportunities. Now, what we do want to speak about is, I need you guys to be careful. We are looking at some changes coming to our retirement funds. Those changes were supposed to happen now on the 1st of March 2015. The changes to retirement funds are not going to happen on the 1st of March 2015. If we can get everyone to agree, they'll happen on the 1st of March 2016, next year, but if not, only 1 March 2017. Now, ladies and gents, I've just put these two slides in to indicate to you that Treasury has gone as far as it's going to go with any tax benefits when we get payouts from our funds. So these two tables, the one before and the one we're looking at the moment, deal with us getting lump sums from funds. You are going to be very heavily taxed if you pull out of a fund before your retirement date, but if you stay in there until death and retirement, then this is the table you're going to be looking at. We've seen absolutely no change in the budget speech in respect of these tables. Treasury is not even thinking about changing the tables. But one thing that they did give as a little throwaway issue in the documentation to the budget speech was in respect of the use that is currently being made of retirement annuity funds. So not just retirement funds, specifically retirement annuity funds. And Treasury raised concern. They did it so loosely that it's difficult to know what their intention is, but Treasury raised concern saying, we know that you are putting money into retirement funds so that that money is not going to be subject to estate duty when you die. Treasury wants to take steps against that to stop taxpayers using retirement annuity funds, RAs, to avoid estate duty. So what's our warning there? If they are already looking to put more assets, more value into your estate, including some of your lump sum payout from a fund on death, if they're looking to put that into your estate for estate duty purposes, estate duty is not going away. And in fact, in a talk we attended with Dennis Davis last year, Judge Dennis Davis, he actually made that clear to us. They want to tax wealth taxes more. Now, ladies and gents, every single year we see an increase in our medical rebates. As all of you know by now, there's no more deduction of medical expenses. We only get the rebates. 6A is a rebate available to everybody who belongs to a medical aid. So we've just seen those monthly cap amounts increasing. 257 for the member and first beneficiary has gone up to 270, and 172 for each additional member has gone up to 181. Now, to be honest, that's going to be an increase we see every year. What was interesting in the budget speech, though, was in respect of the 6B rebate. Now, this is going to be predominantly relevant to our taxpayers who are over 65, because what's going to happen is, if they are contributing to a medical aid, and in terms of our 6B provisions. They are making excessive contributions. So we are given certain parameters. We've got our taxpayers over 65 contributing to a medical aid. Now, if it's found that those contributions are excessive in terms of the 6B parameters, they do get an additional rebate in respect of 6B. Now, ladies and gents, please, I'm not talking about your qualifying medical expenses like doctor's bills and filling scripts at the pharmacy and that kind of thing. No, I'm talking about your fund, medical aid fund contributions. So what they're going to permit for the first time is for a taxpayer over 65, they are going to be able to utilize the 6B rebate as well as the 6A rebate to actually reduce PAYE if you still, unfortunately, are over 65 and still employed and having to work for a living, but at the very least, the 6B rebate will be used to reduce provisional tax. So that's going to be a change we're looking forward to, and it's something that was raised with Treasury. Now, out the blue, this pops out, transfer duty. Now, to be quite frank, ladies and gents, this is sneaky, and this is what we can get from that word progressive. Because what they've done is they've absolutely amended transfer duty completely unexpectedly. And apparently our housing market is slowly recovering for residential properties, and they want to adjust our transfer duty rates from the 1st of March 2015. Now, basically what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, any property you purchase up to 750,000 will now not attract transfer duty. But unfortunately, at the top end of the housing market, round about 2.3 million, transfer duty is going to be higher than it has ever been for the past 4 to 5 years. So if we just have a look at that, you will see what they're proposing. They want you not to, as a purchaser, pay any transfer duty on the value up to 750,000. A very welcome increase in the next bracket, that between 750,000 and 1.25 million, we're at around about 3% transfer duty. Then again, they take us up a bracket saying, okay, between 1.25 and 1.75, we're now 6%, also welcome. But unfortunately, now it gets expensive. 1.7 to 2.25, there our 8% kicks in. And ladies and gents, this is the meanie here. If you're purchasing property over 2.25 million, now you're at an 11% transfer duty. And ladies and gents, I'm sorry, but 2.25 million is just not the amount of money it used to be in the past. That is not an extensive price for a residential property, even if you manage to stay out of Century City or the City Bowl. Okay, so ladies and gents, please watch this transfer duty. Again, very welcome to the middle income earners, but looking for the purchasers of these higher end properties. Now, what we can say is we got our first warning shot for trusts. So not only did they put up the marginal rate for individuals by 1%, excluding the lowest tax bracket, but they also put up the rate of tax for trusts. So this was a little sneaky, that they're just a little one-liner in the budget speech saying the trust tax rate is going up from 40 to 41%. Now, ladies and gents, there's a reason trusts have been left alone. And the reason is this very, very nasty tax return for trusts that was implemented on the 6th of October last year. Now, what they did was, when this brand new trust return came out last year, everybody got such a fright at the immense disclosure required to complete this return. It's full of tax terminology. The detail required is unbelievable. The breaking down of expenses, some which will now be disallowed, it's immense. Everyone got such a fright that SARS said to us, okay, settle down. If you're still filling in these returns now, as you must, for the 2014 year of assessment, man, half the fields you don't have to fill in. Don't panic. Well, ladies and gents, that changes for any submissions for the 2015 year of assessment. So when you're submitting this new return for 2015, every single field is now compulsory. I can tell you the disclosure that this is going to give SARS in respect of trusts is absolutely unprecedented. So what we're going to see is SARS is going to be able to truly and accurately calculate the tax planning we are doing with trusts in respect of our current legislation. We are going to get an accurate indication of what it actually costs the fiscus with the current tax legislation. Now let's think about it. I put up the taxable income rate, tax rate of trusts to 41%. All our legislation at the moment, what does it do? It pulls income out of trusts for tax. Now, ladies and gents, they're not putting up that rate for their health. What they are going to look at, I think, when this new return comes in, they're going to assess the cost to the fiscus of the tax planning we do with trusts, having so many gains and income not taxed in trusts, but rather more efficient beneficiaries to the trust. And we've got the Dennis Davis Committee now stepping finally on to have a look at trusts and wealth taxes and CGT. So watch this space. But like I say, already we've had that increase. Now, you see, ladies and gents, this is something that makes me nervous. Firstly, it's nerve-wracking to me, and I want to indicate it to you and follow on actually from something Daniel said about the fuel levies. But what I want to do is focus on the second bullet point on this slide. Now, ladies and gents, VAT. Yes, it's a nuisance, and yes, it didn't go up and blah, blah, blah. But here's my issue. Most VAT vendors, SABC included, that are registered on what we call the invoice basis for VAT, have very, very difficult cash flow difficulties. Ladies and gents, not only the SABC. So what happens with the invoice basis? Well, the invoice basis actually causes a cash flow crunch because it is either the earlier of the vendor issuing the invoice or receiving payment that triggers when the VAT that they've levied on that consideration must be paid over to SARS. So what's the net effect? The net effect is that I as a vendor can issue an invoice, not receive any payment, not actually collect the output VAT, but still be liable to SARS for that VAT. Now, ladies and gents, that's no different from any poor vendor dealing with the municipality because they were once excited they won a tender, but have submitted their invoice to the municipality, not been paid for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, but SARS doesn't care. SARS is like, yeah, you issued the invoice, can I have my output VAT? Oh, but not SABC. No, not them. Because you see, it's troublesome at the SABC. You guys just won't physically pay your licenses. So what do? They issue you the equivalent of a VAT invoice when they charge you for your annual license each year. The SABC is like everybody else now liable to SARS for that output VAT. Does that make sense? But they haven't been paid because even though it's the right thing to do, you haven't done it, okay? So at the end of the day, now the SABC's got problems. Like every other vendor in the country, but hey, it's the SABC. So what do we start seeing now? Ladies and gents, this is serious. We are actually seeing tax laws being changed to benefit a particular effectively state-owned institution. So only SABC now will be allowed in respect of its license fees to go onto the payments basis. So what does that mean? SABC now only has to pay the VAT over to SARS when you do the right thing and pay your TV licenses. The fact that it issued the invoice months ago is not relevant anymore. Now, ladies and gents, this speaks of something that is starting to become a bit shaky. And I want to raise it again when we see a little bit later in respect of those levies. Now, remember the huge incentives we were going to have for small business. Like Daniel raised for us, we've got this rampant unemployment. Small business is supposed to solve the problem. All they did was tinker with this turnover tax. This regime has never been worked, this micro business tax. It only deals with business that makes less than $1 million a year. And ladies and gents, only effectively retail and manufacturing. Services aren't really favored by this regime. So what do? They play with these brackets. Thanks, we've got new brackets to look at. Ladies and gents, this is one of the issues that I need you guys to be careful about. This apparently is the root of of all evil, and it's the famous BEPS. And this is called base erosion profit shifting. Now, the only thing I want you to come out of this with is the following. Number one, if you as a resident of South Africa, whether you're a company, a trust, or an individual, if you are dealing with a non-resident who is a connected person to you, family member, if they are a beneficiary of a trust, 20% shareholding, I need you to be careful. The major focus is going to come on whether you are dealing with that person at arm's length. Are you charging market-related prices? Are you earning from them proper market-related income? Now, you see, this is this big issue raised by the Davis Tax Committee. They say to South Africa, oh, you are losing thousands. Everybody's pulling money out of South Africa with excess expenditure, pulling it offshore. South Africa's losing. Oh my goodness me. Do we see action like you've never seen it before? SARS has listed this as audit issue number 1. Tax returns are going to place greatest focus on disclosure. They want to know where these international transactions are. And that's why I say to you, if there's negativity, risk, leakage coming out from the Davis Commission, this is the type of reaction we see. Please do not think this whole issue of transfer pricing, as it's also called, is an issue only for companies. It's going to be a big disclosure in the new trust returns as well. Now, ladies and gents, the famous fuel taxes. Now, this I need us to be careful of because, like Daniel rightly said, he said that if we look at these levies, and we can actually break down that 80 cents increase into 2 parts. Number one is a general fuel levy. That's now gone up by 30.5 cents a litre. Last year, it only went up 12 cents a litre, by the way. Now it's gone up 30.5 cents a litre. Now, what does this do? Well, of course, this is going to build our infrastructure, and this is so we don't have to pay so much for e-tolls. If Helen ever lets them into the province, this is the story. Now, where does that big 80 cents come from? Not actually the fuel levy. It comes from the 50 cents a litre increase for the road accident fund. Ladies and gents, we're not collecting on these fuel levies to build infrastructure. We've got a 50 cents increase, only 8 cents last year, to bail out a road accident fund which is mismanaged and broke. That's what that increase is. Are you spying a trend here? So, ladies and gents, this is where we come back to saying, yes, this is going to be an extremely punitive measure, like Daniel said. The oil price goes up, and then we've got that on top of this levy. But again, what is the levy predominantly being raised for? Not the infrastructure build we need for transport, but as I said, to bail out the RAF. Now, you see, if we look at those increases, I've put a table there for you just to indicate that they've gone up drastically from the increases in 2015 to now what we've got for 2016. But you see, what they will do, though, is assist you that if you're paying all those levies in respect of diesel and you are actually in the areas of mining, agriculture, forestry, and fishery, they're going to try and give you some of that levy back. Especially, as I've said, on diesel, they're going to give you a diesel refund. Now, ladies and gents, we've got to watch this. At the moment, if you're claiming diesel refunds, you are being extremely heavily audited by SARS. Now they're saying to us they want to delink these diesel refunds, take them completely out of exposure and the disclosure in the VAT return, and actually rather have a separate system on its own. We don't know if it's going to help or hinder at this stage, but at the end of the day, that's where we are. Another thing that makes me nervous, suddenly we see electricity taxes going up by 2 cents per kilowatt. Now again, ladies and gents, what are these extra electricity taxes going to be used for? The momentum, the feeling in the budget speech was we're going to use these extra electricity taxes collected to help fund other energy saving incentives and initiatives, solar, etc. Ladies and gents, if this extra tax collected is used for an Eskom bailout, we're going to see strike 3 in this trend where we're almost using a tax collection system to stopgap inefficiencies in various state-owned enterprises. So we're going to have to listen in good faith. One of the interesting things, especially for some people in our audience, we've been waiting to see our REITs, our new real estate investment trusts. Ladies and gents, this is the regime for listed property unit trusts, and property loan stock companies. So our property unit trusts and property loan stock companies, if you went and listed on the JSE, we could put you in the new REIT regime. Well, what's quite exciting is they want to extend that to unlisted property owning companies and set up a very similar regulatory framework. So for those of you in that who've been wondering, that's exciting. Now you see, as a lawyer, I battle to make sense of this. I hear about how we've got more people more people getting grants than we've got people employed, etc. But now I hear that our UIF has an accumulated a surplus of 90 billion. So who's paying these unemployed people, I wonder? Because it doesn't seem the UIF is. So what they've done, quite rightly and quite frankly, is they've said, yeah, okay, we've collected a bit much. We're 90 billion in surplus. We're going to work out more ways to give it away, so don't worry, we'll sort that out. But quite nice, ladies and gents, for the next year, we're actually all going to be given a big fat UIF break. So what's going to happen essentially is you've got contributions that both an employer and employee used to make that could be made to a maximum of 148 Rand a month will be reduced to 10 Rand a month. So your UIF contributions are going to be reduced from this 140 maximum to 10 Rand per month, only for a year because they say we've got enough from you. Ladies and gents, always the excise duties, but please, even though the lights go off, I don't want engagements and I don't want babies because it's too expensive, okay? Because as you see, sparkling wine is our worst hit, 48 cents a bottle, and cigars are not far behind. So just behave when the lights are off and do your bit, okay? Lastly, ladies and gents, please, if you've had enough, you're feeling like some people you want to go, well, they're giving you more money to go with, okay? Now, this surprised me because this was a big deal and it was hidden away in the supporting documentation to the budget speech. This wasn't mentioned in the main speech, and I don't know why. Ladies and gents, we've seen a fundamental change in our exchange controls. Number one, your annual capital allowance, the amount you can take out each calendar year, has gone up, and this is from the 1st of April this year. It's gone up from 4 million to 10 million. You must be over 18. You must have the 10 million and a tax clearance, okay? Just, details. But what is nice is that discretionary allowance of 1 million. Now, ladies and gents, you have to be over 18 and have the 1 million. We've done that. But you do not need a tax clearance to take the discretionary 1 million out each year. And what they've done is they've taken away all the subcategories of what you could do with your 1 million you took out. Before you had to buy gifts for people, travel, maintain people, all sorts of jazz. That's all gone now. I do laugh at South Africa though. In the actual the reading around the budget speech, they use the word and they say to us, please take your 1 million out, use it for anything, but it must be a legal purpose. So, as long as we all straight, we all know. So ladies and gents, what this means is with the tax clearance, you can now take from April this year up to 10 million a calendar year. With no tax clearance, you can take out 1 million, so that would actually give you 11 million to take out a year. Very, very strange to see, but it is a step towards the relaxing of the exchange controls. So ladies and gents, a bit of a mixed bag for tax, like I say. Keep your eye on any reports from the Dennis Davis Commission and where that's going to lead us. Before I finish this morning, firstly, just to say thank you for joining us again, but I've got a very, very blurry-eyed tax team because we were all sitting till 1, 2, 3 this morning getting your budget booklets and your pocket guides ready for you. So please, please, as you leave the venue, don't forget to pick up a pack. It's got all the budget speech information in, all the rates, everything is there. And again, thank you very, very much for joining us this morning.